The sea takes no prisoners. If anything made by humans, including other human beings, slips below the waves, there's a strong chance it will stay down there forever. On the other hand, though, non-human life thrives underwater, and we know surprisingly little about the complex creatures and ecosystems that exist at the depths. We're going exploring the deep blue sea today in this video, and reporting on some of the strangest and most incredible things to be found within it. When the Oceania Europe organization dispatched its Ranger ship to the Aeolian Islands just north of Sicily in June 2018, its mission was very similar to the mission of the Starship Enterprise in Star Trek, to seek out new life. It succeeded in doing that in a very impressive way. The area is made up of 8 volcanic islands that are registered as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, but have been largely left unexplored until now from an undersea perspective. When the Spanish crew came to take a closer look, they were blown away by the beauty and complexity of what they saw. More than 3,000 feet down below the surface, they encountered bright, colorful coral forests, and living inside those forests, whole species of previously undiscovered sea creatures. The need for further investigation was immediately obvious, and so Oceania Europe is currently trying to get the area designated as a natural marine reserve to afford protection to the newly discovered marine life. In years to come, we'll hopefully know more about these life forms and how they live. But in the meantime, the pictures the Ranger came back with are stunning. The fabled lost city of Atlantis is one of the most widely known and commonly repeated myths in the entire world, and almost every advanced civilization has a version of it in their folklore. Many possible locations for the real Atlantis, if such a place ever existed, have been proposed, and here's England's best claim on it. These underwater images show ancient ruins just off the coast of Dunwich in Suffolk, and prove beyond all reasonable doubt that in times of antiquity, this undersea area was once a busy port. Acoustic imaging had to be used to obtain the pictures because the waters in the area are so murky and dark that the ruins could never be seen with the human eye. Even though the sunken buildings are only around 30 feet below the surface, they exist in almost total darkness. Detailed analysis of the pictures has identified the village's old church and priory. During the 11th century, Dunwich was one of the largest towns in the country, but coastal erosion has claimed much of its former land and will become an even bigger problem in years to come. You've heard of the Milky Way, but have you ever heard of the Milky Seas? If not, we're delighted to introduce them to you. The strangely colored waters are the largest bioluminescent area in the world. The expanse is just off the coast of Somalia, but somehow managed to go undetected by scientists until 2005. The lack of official confirmation didn't stop stories circulating, though. Sailors have claimed to have seen the White Sea and sailed through it for centuries, and now their stories have been confirmed. The area, which is around the same size as the US state of Connecticut, even gets a passing mention in the classic Jules Verne novel 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Scientists ignored the claims for years because they thought that the concentration of bacteria that would be required to produce such an effect was impossible. But Steve Miller decided he was going to prove or disprove the phenomenon once and for all. All he needed to do was compare the logs of the SS Lima, which claimed to have sailed through the area in 1995, with meteorological satellite data from the same night. When he did, the truth was staring him straight in the face. It's thought that the effect is caused by a bacteria called Vibrio harveyi, although how such a large congregation of it exists is a mystery. Back in the 1940s, there was a very pleasant resort and hotel on the banks of Lake Minnewanka in Alberta, Canada, called Minnewanka Landing. You can still visit the resort today, but you'll need diving equipment to see it. It's 60 feet below the waterline, and it didn't get there by accident. The resort first opened in 1888 and offered cottages, restaurants, hotels, and cruise boat rental, but it fell victim to destruction from its own side during the Second World War. It had been decided that the nearby Calgary Power Company needed to increase its hydroelectric capacity to supply an explosives plant, and the only way to do it was to expand the lake. Minnewanka Landing was deliberately drowned in June 1941 as the water levels rose by 100 feet. The waters of the lake are exceptionally cold, and so the freezing temperatures have preserved the remnants of the resort surprisingly well. It's become a popular site with divers, although the frigid temperatures mean that it isn't an ideal place to go if you're new to the hobby. While Canada has a somewhat charming underwater vacation resort, Estonia attracts divers with its slightly less charming underwater abandoned prison. Rumu Prison used to be a forced labor camp during the Soviet era, and it's unlikely that the people who were interred here decades ago ever imagined that it would one day become a place of such outstanding beauty. The old prison was built at the tip of a limestone quarry, and the quarry provided torturous, back-breaking work for the inmates unfortunate enough to be interred there. Rumu was built during the 1940s and remained in use until 1991, when Estonia became independent. There was never a conscious choice made to drown the facility. It just so happened that with nobody working at the site to keep the groundwater out, it aggressively reclaimed the land and formed a brand new lake. Because of that, many of the old mining machines are still present underwater, inside the buildings that used to house the people who worked on them. Parts of the structure still poke out above the water level and have the appearance of a forgotten ancient castle. You'll find another sunken settlement off the coast of Atlit in Israel, although this one is far older than the English location we looked at earlier. It's Atlit Ham, and it's approximately 9,000 years old. This was once a Neolithic village, spread across 130,000 feet and around 30 feet below the level of the water. Nobody even knew it was there until 1984, when it was discovered by marine archaeologist Ehud Galili, and ever since then, it's been giving up its secrets one exploratory visit at a time. As is the case with many Neolithic-era settlements, there's a mysterious stone circle at the center of the village. This one surrounds a freshwater spring, and further out from the center, there are houses and burial sites. Geological evidence at the site suggests that the end came quite suddenly for Atlit Ham. It's likely that it sank when a tsunami was unleashed by the eruption of a Mediterranean volcano. A buildup of dead fish in the area appears to support this theory, although the presence of tuberculosis in two skeletons that have been retrieved from the site might imply that disease had claimed the lives of the residents before the tsunami struck. We started this video by looking at an underwater coral forest near Sicily. Now here's an underwater rainforest in Brazil. Normally speaking, plants and trees like this couldn't grow underwater. There's a reason for their existence here. Under normal conditions, this forest wouldn't be underwater at all. Heavy flooding in the area in early 2019 caused the banks of both the Rio da Prata and Olo de Agua rivers to burst their banks, drowning the surroundings in perfectly clear water. The human-made structures, such as the bridges and hiking trails, take on a fairy tale-like appearance during their submersion, and some people think that it made the entire Rio da Prata Ecological Recanto Park look even more beautiful than ever. Flooding like this has happened at the site before, and will likely happen one day again, but it doesn't usually last for long. After a few days, the water drains away, and the land and its features dry out until the next time. Fortunately, the trees and plants are no worse off because of their occasional bath. Sticking with the theme of facilities and destinations you wouldn't usually expect to find underwater, this is Nemo's Garden, an underwater farm in Noli, Italy. It's an ecological project dreamed up by chemical engineer Sergio Gambarini, who runs a scuba diving business in the local area. He came up with the idea during a conversation with a marine biologist, and 2 days later, he dived down to the bottom of Noli Bay to plant a vase full of basil seeds inside a plastic balloon. The plant began to grow, and so Gambarini decided to find out what else he could grow below the water. He expanded one plant at a time, and now there are more than 700 unique varieties of plants and flowers under the water. While it's a little more than a stunning underwater attraction at the moment, he hopes his techniques could one day be adapted to allow for the creation of underwater farms in locations around the world, where access to water on land is hard to come by, and conventional farming is therefore difficult. Sculptures and statues belonging to ancient and historic civilizations sometimes end up under the water due to coastal erosion or landslip. But the giant ocean Atlas statue in Nassau in the Bahamas didn't get there by mistake or misfortune. It was placed in its current location on purpose, and it's thought to be the biggest underwater sculpture in the world. The work of art was created by Jason DeCaires Taylor, who combines his interest in sculpture with his interest in diving and photography to create beautiful and unusual images and exhibits. Ocean Atlas is by far and away his most ambitious work. The statue, which was erected in 2014, is made from sustainable materials and is intended to encourage and support the growth of coral in the area. The base of the statue is 15 feet below the water, although the top is often visible during warm weather when the tide is out. Inspired by the Greek myth of Atlantis, Taylor's sculpture depicts a female Bahamian figure supporting the ceiling of the ocean and preventing it from collapsing. We're trying to think of a better description for this next discovery than calling it a strange, floating, purple sea blob from the Channel Islands. But we can't. So here's a strange, floating, purple deep-sea blob from the Channel Islands. It's not just us who got confused by its identity or existence. The research team who came across it by accident while operating the EV Nautilus exploration vessel in 2016 was equally surprised. They've never seen anything like it before or since anywhere in the world, and they can't offer us any definitive explanation for its existence. They had a few guesses, though. They noticed that the purple sphere, which seems to have an internal glow, has two distinct lobes, and so they theorized that it might be a hitherto unknown type of nudibranch, which is a name given to mollusks that exist without shells. On the other hand, it could be a disco ball used by fish for all the wild parties they're having when we're not looking. Most of you will have heard of England's King Arthur legend, the tale of the great warrior king who pulled a sword from a stone. According to most versions of the tale, his sword Excalibur is thrown into a lake as the king is on the verge of death, never to be seen again. That is, of course, unless you choose to believe that the mysterious 700-year-old sword found at the bottom of a Bosnian river in October 2019 could be the real Excalibur. It certainly fits at least part of the story. The sword was inexplicably found to be embedded in rock on the riverbed. The sword was 36 feet down, and the most likely clue to its origin probably lays in the fact that the ruins of a medieval castle exist not far away from the river in the city of Zvekaj. There's a discrepancy, though. The castle was known to be in use during the 17th and 18th centuries, but the blade of the sword comes from the 14th. Swords like this one are exceptionally rare. It's only the second example found in the Balkans during the past 100 years. Abandoned trains turn up in all kinds of places you wouldn't expect them to be. If you're one of our subscribers, you've probably seen evidence of that already in some of our previous videos. We've never seen them in a location quite so strange as this before, though. Off the coast of Long Branch, New Jersey in the United States of America, there are the well-preserved remains of two 1850s steam locomotives. Nobody has any idea how they got there. There's no record of them ever going missing or being stolen, and also no record of them deliberately being sunk. At almost 100 feet below the level of the water, they're a long way down, so the most popular theory is that they were lost in a storm while being shipped from Boston to the mid-Atlantic, but for some reason, were never reported. They may even have been pushed off a barge deliberately to save the ship from sinking in rough seas. Although they have a heavy coating of barnacles and sea life, the trains have been identified as Planet Class 222T models and would make for interesting museum exhibits if anyone ever came up with the cash to raise them from their watery grave.
subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications, and you will be the first to know when a new video comes out. Thank you for watching, and see you soon!